Hi, I have a serious problem with LUCY HALE Romcoms. Now you might be asking, why does a single dude in his mid-20s have a problem with semi-decent romantic comedy movies featuring a fairly well-liked and unproblematic actress? At least as far as I know, the comments will probably prove me wrong on that. Well, in order to answer that, I need to take you back to about a month ago. You see, I am a lonely guy. And as a lonely guy, when the month of February comes around, or Valentine's Day specifically, I like to drown in my sorrows by watching a bunch of rom-coms. And I've seen my fair share of rom-coms. Believe me, these are just some of the ones I've seen. Anyway, so naturally, it was one of those lonely nights where I was laying on the couch scrolling forever to find something to watch. And eventually, I stumbled upon this movie called The Hating Game, starring LUCY HALE. And it looked like a fun movie, nothing necessarily special, but it could be exactly what I needed. But I decided to keep looking to see if there was anything better, and that's when I found Which Brings Me to You, another rom-com starring LUCY HALE that looked very similar to the first one. Then another one that looked the same, again starring LUCY HALE. Everywhere I went, I saw her face. And by the end of the night, I had at least 5 possibly good movies to watch, all starring LUCY HALE. And I could not decide which one looked the best, to the point that hours had already passed and I was simply too tired to even watch one. So today, we're gonna try and fix that. One thing you should know about me is that I love to rewatch rom-coms. Like, I've seen Set It Up pretty much every year since it came out. I love that movie. So we are going to watch every single one of LUCY HALE's rom-coms to figure out which one's best, so that when I am inevitably alone again next year for Valentine's Day, I will know which one I should watch. This is a totally drawn out backstory to basically say we're going to rank most of her movies. This is a ranking video. Now, in order to properly rank these movies, we have to establish 2 things. First is what defines a rom-com, a romance comedy, because in my opinion, I would argue that there are more of them than just the ones labeled as a rom-com. So I took the liberty of picking every movie from LUCY HALE's filmography that looks to have her as either the main character or the main love interest, and with that also making sure the movie looks like it could be funny. I am sure I missed a couple. Sorry. The second thing we need to address is the ranking system for these movies. Now, we could just do a Rotten Tomatoes percentage or a tier list, but I think it'd be best to do our very own thing, which is why I've created this totally revolutionary system that you have never seen before, the 5-star system. Now, with the 5-star system, I have made some modifications. First, each star will be equal to 5 points, meaning that the most a movie could get is 5 stars or 25 points. But more importantly, each star will be representative of a certain aspect of the movie. And those are as follows. The first star is for LUCY HALE's character. Basically, do I like her? Does she make good decisions? Is she a good person? Are there any blaring red flags? Basically, if I had the opportunity to date this person in real life, would I? That's what the first star will answer. The second star is the same thing, but for the love interest. I'm pretty sure she only dates guys in these movies, so I'm gonna refer to them as he until proven otherwise. But is he a good person? Does he make good decisions? Are there things that he does that I would or wouldn't do if I were in his position? That's basically how I'll judge him. The third star is all about the chemistry between the characters. Basically, is there any? You guys who have watched a lot of rom-coms know this. You can tell if the actors actually like each other or the opposite, or they're just really good actors. Personally, I want the chemistry to be so good that I wouldn't be surprised if they had an affair with each other off screen. If I don't get that feeling, then the movie won't get the full 5 points. The fourth star is kind of a funny one, but it's their occupation and living situations. Listen, if you've ever watched any rom-com ever in your life, you know the main character's jobs are the most generic thing possible. Seriously, you know what? I'm going to list the 3 occupations that I think are the most common in these types of movies, and I want to see if you can guess them. Comment down below your guesses, and then let me know if you were right. I'll give you like 5 seconds. Okay, time's up. So I put artist, musician, and writer. Those are the most generic and yet super popular jobs that people have in rom-coms. Throw in a small town farmer or a journalist or a doctor, and you've pretty much said every job every rom-com character has ever had. So I will judge based on that, but more so how their occupation relates to their living situation. I'm sorry, if you're a struggling artist in Manhattan and you own a 900 square foot studio just for your art along with a 1,300 square foot 2-bedroom in a high-rise, I'm gonna be a little little suspicious. That math does not add up. The fifth and final star, which I find to be the most important, is the third act conflict. You guys know what I'm talking about. Almost every rom-com ever made has this plot. They meet and get to know each other in Act 1. In Act 2, they start to get a little closer and they start falling in love. But then at the end of Act 2 or beginning of Act 3, one of them does something stupid to hurt the other one, and then they fight, and then they break up, and then it's either days or months or even years when they finally get back together and they apologize for everything and they make up and blah 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 blah. My ranking is based on how good is that conflict? Is it a reasonable fight, or is it dumb and makes no sense? Is it something that could have been solved with a simple conversation had you guys conversated? That's what I will want to know. I'll also throw in the apology or the characters making up. Like, did they redeem themselves, or should they have never gotten back together based on the fight? That's what the final star is all about. So now that we have the ranking system in place, it's finally time to start our journey into these movies. So the first movie we're gonna cover is called A Nice Girl Like You, and it's about a character named Lucy, played by Lucy Hale. Yeah, I know. Lucy Hale is playing a character named Lucy. That kind of thing's gonna happen a lot today, as you'll see. But basically the storyline is she is bad at canoodling. You know, you guys know what I mean when I say canoodling, right? Yeah, basically she's dating this deadbeat guy who unfortunately reminds me a lot of me, who does nothing but chill in the garage watching questionable things on the internet and playing video games. Seriously, I don't know how he pulled Lucy Hale. Maybe he was funny at one point and that won her over, but the movie did not show that. But basically he says, yeah, she sucks at canoodling, so they break up, and then she goes on an entire journey of self-discovery trying to get better at the canoodling. She even has this like 12-step to-do list that she uses to kind of get better at it, like going to a club or watching some certain types of films, you know, that kind of stuff. And that's what unfortunately brings in our love interest, Grant. I don't really like Grant. For a little more context, she is a violinist who works at weddings and ballrooms and stuff like that, and Grant just happened to be a best man at one of those weddings, and that's where they first meet. And every time these two meet in the movie, Lucy is at her lowest point trying to get better at the canoodling, and he just happens to be there, which is super embarrassing for her, but what's worse is that Grant doubles down on it. I think the point of these scenes was to kind of make Lucy Hale a little more vulnerable and relatable, while putting Grant more on a pedestal and making him seem a little more charming, but that didn't work for me. My opinion of Lucy didn't really change whatsoever, but it did make me hate Grant more. But yeah, he runs into her when she's on the floor in the bathroom and kind of makes fun of her. He runs into her at a certain shop that you probably don't want people knowing you go to, and also makes fun of her, which is funny because he's there too. Granted, he has reasons because he's an architect and whatever, but he just like never lets up. It's kind of weird. Anyway, eventually they decide to go on their first date, and I gotta tell you, it is the most awkward first date I've ever experienced in my life. First, they have this fancy dinner where they're kind of talking, kind of getting along, and then they get to talking about books, which leads to one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. Watch this.
Just gonna ask you what your favorite book was.
I have two.
I also have two favorites.
Same time, kind of three?
Yes. All right. Everything that
Story of
rises
Your
must
Life
converge, and
Everything That
Story of
Rises
Your
Must
Life.
Converge.
Are you fucking kidding me, movie? Do you know how many books exist in the world? You can't tell me that these two people who just met and don't really know each other not only have the same favorite book, but the same favorite two books. No. No, I'm movie, I am not giving you that. Then it gets to the awkward part of the date where they go to this whole random show where there's this like canoodling therapist, and she brings Lucy up to the stage and just constantly belittles her for not being good at canoodling, and all Grant is doing is just laughing at her. It's so weird and so awkward, and she's clearly uncomfortable, and Grant does nothing to help her. It's such a weird date. And then it gets worse because at the very end of the date, they kind of say goodbye, and he goes to kiss Lucy and ends up just kissing her forehead, and it's just so awkward. Then the movie goes and breaks one of my cardinal sins when it comes to rom-coms. You see, a little time passes after that date, and then he calls asking to go on another date. And right after Lucy leaves to go on the date, it cuts to her and Grant making out in her bedroom. I'm sorry. Huh? Rom-com movie makers, I need you to hear me. I need you to listen, okay? One of the best parts of the moment is the build-up to the moment. The moment is only as good as the build-up to the moment. In a lot of rom-coms or just a lot of movies, they might do something where at the beginning of the movie, two people are talking at a bar, and then the next thing you know, they're in bed together. The build-up was them talking at the bar. That's fine. But in this case, you guys didn't even show the date, you didn't show the build-up, and they just are immediately canoodling in bed. That's not fun to watch, especially when you consider what the last date was, where they had an awkward encounter where they can't even kiss at the end of the night. How do you go from that to being in bed together? I feel like we missed a giant step. No? Is that just me? It only gets worse because in the morning, Grant wakes up first and sees toys, toys all around her bedroom. He is completely surrounded because, again, she has been trying to get better at canoodling, and part of her to-do list is using these toys. But that does freak him out just a little bit, which is actually very fair. I would be freaked out too if I saw that in the morning. But then he finds these pants, specifically maternity pants. Now, watching the movie, you will know that Lucy bought these pants specifically because it makes her look good. However, he does not know that. And he I can't even He basically sees the pants and immediately thinks that she wants to have a baby with him, which is why she has all the toys and why she has the pants. So he runs out immediately and doesn't talk to her for months. Like, dude, I get your thinking. All right, I get Grant's thinking, but he jumped to conclusions so fast without even talking to Lucy. It was so stupid. So like I said, months pass, and then Grant finds Lucy at some random bar in Las Vegas because Las Vegas is the size of a toothpick, and basically apologizes to her for everything. However, in this apology, he does not even bring up the pants thing, he just apologizes for leaving and not calling her. It is only until they start canoodling again where he brings it up.
Stop.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt the baby.
I'm not pregnant.
You know?
I know.
At your house, you had maternity pants. I saw the pants and I freaked out, and that's why. What?
Oh my God, you left because you thought I was pregnant?
It's a scary proposition.
Wait, you thought that and you still wanted to be with me?
Are you fucking serious, movie? Okay, I've been laughing at this. This is funny. This is a dumb rom-com bit. Terrible communication, whatever. But this line right here.
You thought that and you still wanted to be with me.
I'm sorry, excuse me? So Lucy, you're giving him bonus points for staying even if there's a baby. Even though 2 months ago he left because he thought you were having a baby. Yeah, that math checks out. What? See, I know you should never judge someone on their biggest mistakes or anything, but let me tell you, if you're having Taco Bell and your burrito is terrible except for the last bite for some reason is a really good bite, that doesn't make it a good burrito. If you're listening to an album and the last song slaps but the first 7 didn't, that doesn't make it a good album. That just means there was a good song in that album. So you should not be giving Grant credit for being there when he wasn't there for 2 months before. No. So anyway, then they get together and it all works out, blah, 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 whatever. So let's get to the reviews. Starting with Lucy, her character was overall fine. There isn't really necessarily anything bad about her. I will say she does get very obsessed with all of her canoodling stuff, which is definitely scary, and the amount of toys she had in her room definitely wasn't a red flag, but maybe a yellow flag. I'm not sure, a beige flag. I don't know. So overall, I'd give her character middle of the road, 3 points. As for Grant, he sucked. Like I said before, he just constantly belittled her. He was constantly kind of a dick to her. I really don't think he was a nice guy. I think he just got away with a lot because he has a nice smile. But him running away in the third act was definitely the dude, not only are you terrible at commitment, you're also just a dumbass. Overall, I did not really like his character that much. I don't think he was good. I will give him 2 points. Now, as far as their chemistry goes, honestly, I thought it was fine. I don't really have any good or bad opinions. They seem to bounce off each other fairly well, but not to the point where I'm like, oh yeah, they were definitely doing stuff behind the scenes. Again, kind of middle of the road. I'll give them 3 points. Now, occupation and living situation, I'm kind of gonna do the same thing. Lucy was a musician, which is one of those basic generic occupations, but at least it was a violinist, which is a little more interesting. And then we didn't really get much from Grant and his occupation, just that he was an architect and he seemed to have some money. So once again, middle of the road, I'll give it 3 points. And then the third act conflict, again, I kind of went over it before, but it was so stupid. Like, the whole thing could have been solved with a quick conversation. You could have been like, hey, Lucy, just curious, why do you have maternity pants? Oh, they make me look good. Oh, well, I think you look good either way, but that's cool. Now, obviously that would have sounded better coming from him rather than me because he's this tall, good looking British guy, but that would have solved the entire third act problem and we wouldn't have had to go through these 2 months of whatever the fuck that was. So because of all that, I'm giving it a solid 1 point, which brings this movie to a total of 12 points or 2.4 stars. Not a great start, but we have plenty of other movies to go through. By the way, guys, if you're liking this video, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by May. I'm not quite sure if I'll get there, but I'm trying my best. So if you guys want to help me out, that would be great. And that gives me more motivation to make more videos like this. So I'd really appreciate it. But anyway, so the next movie is called Which Brings Me to You, featuring a girl named Jane and a guy named Will. And they first meet at a wedding, which, by the way, almost every rom-com that Lucy Hale is in features a wedding at least at some point. I don't know why, it just does. Granted, a lot of rom-coms feature weddings. I'm just saying that's something I noticed. But basically they meet, and about 5 minutes later, they're both like, hey, yo, you want a canoodle in the closet? Yeah? Okay, cool. And so they do. Until Will decides to stop. For some reason. Yeah, see, this is kind of the starting point of the entire plot that I don't really understand. He's kind of like, hey, before we canoodle, can we like talk about our feelings?
What? I don't think it's a good idea.
What's your point?
I think that we could just talk for a minute.
Talk?
Yeah, just talk.
It's like, why? I was very much with Jane in this. I'm like, why? If you didn't want to do it, that's fine, but like, why? I feel like had you guys canoodled and then continued with the exact same storyline of this movie, the outcome would have been the exact same. Now, granted, there's probably some psychological reasoning as to why he stopped that is explored in this movie, but I don't really know how to get into that, nor do I want to. This video is all about making fun and pulling jokes out of my ass, so. Anyway, Jane naturally gets pissed at him because she wanted to canoodle, but she reluctantly decides to do the talking that he wanted to do, and they start to get to know each other. Now, this movie actually has less to do with Jane and Will getting together and more with them exploring their past through a lot of flashbacks and other storylines. And I will say, man, do these two have some interesting love choices. Will has dated a girl with abusive parents, a girl who's quite a bit older than him, and a girl who he ends up having a kid with. I'll get to that one later. Jane, on the other hand, has dated a guy who she doesn't even know his last name, a guy with some severe mental problems, and her professor, pretty much doing the exact same storyline as her storyline in Pretty Little Liars. Yeah, I've watched that. I've watched the entirety of Pretty Little Liars. But intermixed with their stories, they also go on a few adventures. They go to an abandoned amusement park, they crash this anniversary party, and they start to get to know each other and fall in love, as all rom-coms should. Then we get to the third act conflict, which, oh boy, is it interesting. Now, unlike the last one where I just thought it was dumb and it was funny, this one actually pissed me off. Will basically waits till the end of the movie to tell Jane that he has a daughter. Now, Jane, quite a bit earlier in the film, asked him this.
Do you have a girlfriend, Will? And let me be clear. By girlfriend, I mean, do you have any significant relationships in your life that might come up at a later time?
And Will also said this earlier.
Fuck it, let's just tell each other everything, you know?
So literally, Will just ruined the entire day by not telling Jane about his daughter, especially when Will basically said, we should have no secrets. Like what were you trying to do there, Will? Buddy, you fumbled. You were doing so well. You pissed her off at the beginning, and yet she was still liking you by the end. And then you have to just drop that giant fact on her near the end. Now, what I like though is that while Jane did not like that Will didn't tell her, she doesn't actually have a huge problem with the fact that he does have a daughter. It's just that he kept that information from her. So after a little bit of time apart, they finally get back together. He apologizes, they make up, and it seems to work out all in the end. So I do feel like I don't have as much to say about this movie, but I think in this sense, that's actually a good thing. But as far as the reviews, we'll start with Jane's character. Honestly, I really liked Jane in this movie. I do think she was a little rude to Will for a lot of it, but granted, what happened in the beginning does justify it a little bit. I will give her 4 points. I think she was a good character. For Will, I will also give him 4 points. I think he was really good throughout this movie. I do think the thing at the beginning where he said no to the canoodling halfway through was a little weird. And then of course, not telling Jane about his daughter definitely takes a point off. But besides that, he was actually a very nice, respectful person. He didn't piss me off that much. He was actually nice to Jane for the most part. I will also give him 4 points. The chemistry I also thought was pretty good in this movie. I think they bounced off each other pretty well. You could definitely see them start to develop feelings with each other over time. I don't think it was the best chemistry I've ever seen in the world, but I do think it seemed like they could be an actual couple. So I will also give the chemistry star 4 points. Now, the occupation is where this movie is going to lose a couple points because Jane is a freelance writer and Will is a photographer. Now, I didn't add photography as one of those generic occupations, but it is very much in line with like artists and musicians. And the writer is the most generic thing I've ever heard in my life. I will say we didn't really see any of their living situations, so I can't really grade on that. But because of their most generic jobs I've ever heard of in my life, they're getting 2 points for that. And then the third act conflict again is is that the fact that he did not tell Jane about his daughter, I thought that was actually a pretty good third act conflict. I think Jane reacted as she should have. I think Will apologized in a pretty good way at the end. Overall, I thought it was good. I just think could have been solved so much earlier had you just been honest with her. So for that, I am going to take off a point. So I will give the third act 4 points. Now with that, that leaves this movie with a total of 18 points or 3.6 stars. That is a very good rating for one of these rom-coms. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. I think there's some drama and emotion there as well. I think it's a good time, but we still have quite a few movies to get through, so let's just move on to the next one. The next movie is called Puppy Love, and it features dogs, so it's an automatic 5 stars. Moving on. Okay, fine. I'm kidding. We'll go back to Puppy Love. So this movie features a girl named Nicole and a guy named Max. Though, please don't get mad, I might just refer to him as Barry Allen. Might not be able to help it. But these two meet on a dating app and end up having their first date as a dog date as well, bringing both of their dogs. And let me just say, this first date is the worst first date I have ever seen in my life. First, we should establish that Max is a very interesting character. He's got quite a few problems. He's a bit of a clean freak, he's very organized, he's very introverted, but he also has social anxiety. In fact, the reason he has a dog in the first place is because his therapist said he should get one. Now, because of that, he does not handle social interactions all that well. And Nicole is very visibly uncomfortable with this first date. You can see it in her face and the way she stands. But she still tries to make the best of it by giving him hot and spicy food that makes him so ill, he ends up throwing up. And because of that, their dogs run off and then they have to go looking for them, only to find out their dogs have canoodled. And that pisses Max off, it makes Nicole upset, and they get into this huge argument, and if it wasn't a rom-com, we would never see these two interact with each other ever again. Now, fortunately, or unfortunately for them, depending on your view, because of their dogs canoodling, Max's dog gets pregnant. And so Nicole and Max have to start hanging out a lot more because Nicole has the father and Max has the mother, and they want to do what's best for their dogs. So they start hanging out a lot more, going on dog walks together, hanging out at each other's places, specifically Barry Allen's place. And it gets to the point where Nicole kind of moves in with Max along with her dog. And that causes a whole lot of problems for Max. Again, Max has a lot of problems. He does not like people messing with his stuff, invading his space. He's very much kept to himself. So having Nicole around makes him very anxious and causes a lot of problems. Not to mention, Nicole is not a very good communicator in the sense that she never asks him anything like, hey, can I move in and move my stuff here? Or, hey, can I move these towels while you're showering? It basically sends Max off the rails for a lot of it, and it is somewhat justified. I will say Max goes a little too far sometimes, like he needs to dial it back, but Nicole should have asked him first because she's invading his home basically. And I think one thing with everything I'm saying is it doesn't seem like there's a lot of love going on. They kind of still hate each other from the first date, and now they hate each other more because of the dogs getting together, but they don't really have that many scenes of them starting to not hate each other. They do pull a rom-com trope of having a montage scene of them getting along more, but they don't really have a build up to them starting to get along, which is a little weird. Anyway, then we get to the third act, and at this point Nicole has pretty much moved all the way in, and she decides to go out for a date night. Now, the big problem with this date night is that they both kind of fumble the bag on going on the date together. She basically asks him if he wants to go out, and he basically asks, is it just going to be us or are there going to be other people? And she stumbles and said, oh yeah, there will be other people. So because of that, he says no, basically getting them both pissed at each other because they both wanted to go on the date with just each other. So she goes out on the date night with one of her friends, and she runs into one of her clients, this weird ass guy. For context, by the way, she's a home decorator. So her and this guy get extremely drunk, and she ends up taking him back to Max's place, which is the dumbest decision I've ever seen Lucy Hale's character make in any of these rom-coms so far. Max has a very private life. He doesn't like when people mess with his stuff. He doesn't like people coming over unannounced, and she brings in the worst and drunkest guy ever, who ends up ruining one of Max's collectible items from The Godfather. It is just a huge cluster that honestly should have been avoided. And to make matters worse, because of this whole thing, Max's dog runs off. The door was left open, and now he can't find her. So he has to go running out in the middle of the night in the rain, where he eventually finds her in the park. But all of that leads up to Max kicking Nicole out, which honestly I do think is completely justified, though I do kind of hate that he kicks her out as soon as possible. I mean, she could have at least slept through the night, you know. Anyway, then a little bit of time passes, like a couple days. Max realizes he was a little too harsh, went a little too far, but more importantly, Nicole does finally come and apologize, and it's actually a very good apology. It works out really well, and overall I thought it was a very healthy way of these two characters making up so much to the point where they finally get together, and their dogs have babies, and they're so cute. Now, of course, let's start with Lucy Hale's character. Overall, Nicole, not great. Not bad, but not great. Overall, I think she had a really kind heart. I think she was fun. I think she was easy to like. However, she constantly invaded Max's space. She did not communicate with him very well. She was also not super grateful or thankful that Max let her stay there for as long as she did. I mean, she did thank him a little bit, but it wasn't anything crazy. And then, of course, the big thing was the third act of bringing that guy home. That was a huge red flag. She should have never done it. Granted, I will say she apologized really well, like I said before. So I'm going to give her the middle of the road, and I'm going to give her 3 points. For Max, I'm also going to give him 3 points because while he didn't do anything crazy like the third act thing with bringing the guy home, he was just very annoying. Like, I understand he does have some problems, he has some social anxiety, but he took it way too far sometimes, and he was honestly kind of a dick about it a lot of times. But again, he wasn't the worst guy in the world because he did still help Nicole, and he even helped her apply to some school or something. I don't remember exactly what the storyline was, but he helped her with that. So overall, not the worst guy in the world, but not the best guy either. So like Nicole, I'll give him 3 points. As far as their chemistry goes, this is an interesting one because I thought their chemistry was really good, but not on the love side. Basically, I felt like the actors played off each other really well. It seemed like they worked together really well in terms of acting, but mainly when they hated each other. Like when they bickered and argued with each other, that's where I was like, oh, they have great chemistry. I didn't really feel the love though. And that was kind of a whole problem with the movie itself, is I didn't really feel like there was a good transition from them hating each other to loving each other. It kind of just seemed like they hate each other, but the movie's gonna tell you by the end they're gonna love each other. There wasn't really a smooth transition there. So I'm gonna give it middle of the road, 3 points. Now, occupation, I'm actually gonna give them some brownie points. Max worked in IT, which is a fairly uncommon job for a rom-com character, and his living situation seemed pretty on par with what I would expect an IT person to make. And then Nicole was a home decorator, which isn't the most uncommon occupation in a rom-com ever, but it wasn't too bad either. And she actually seemed to struggle with her living situation a little bit. Her place was kind of small and cluttered, and she was getting kicked out, which doesn't really have anything to do with her living situation based on her job. It was because of the dog, but it didn't seem too out of the question. So with 2 fairly uncommon jobs and 2 reasonable living situations, I'm gonna give it a 4. And then the last one, of course, is the third act conflict, which I already kind of went through. And again, I'll say I think it was perfectly reasonable for Max to have the crash out that he did. I did think he took it a little too far, just as Nicole took it a little too far by bringing the guy home, but she apologized really well and he apologized as well. So I think it all worked out. I will give the third act conflict a 4, which gives this movie a total of 17 points or 3.4 stars. Not quite the best so far, but pretty dang close. Let's move on to the next movie. Next up, we have The Hating Game. And oh boy, is this is an interesting one. So our main characters are Lucy and Josh. Yes, once again, Lucy Hale is playing a character named Lucy. We haven't even got to the Katies yet, but that'll be interesting down the road. But basically the story goes, these 2 characters hate each other. Surprise, surprise. And the reason for them hating each other is this.
My reasons for hating Joshua Templeman are several. 1, I had never seen him smile. Oh, hi. 2, he's a total control freak. Just look at his desk. Reason number 3, he always corrects any tiny mistake I make. 4, and perhaps most importantly, after the merger, he waltzed in with a list of people to fire, and it included all my work friends, which were all my friends.
Like, okay. I don't really think half of those are really worth hating someone over. I guess the big one would be that Josh hired your friends, but literally later in the movie, you say that he only had to do that because he had to save the company. So you actually respect him for doing that. I could see still emotionally hating him, but none of these seem like reasons you should actually hate a person. Anyway, so they basically hate each other for little to no reason, and the whole movie is just a petty game back and forth. But then they randomly get stuck in an elevator and decide to start going at it for some reason, because, you know, there's a very fine line between hating and loving someone, just like there's a fine line between deciding if I liked this movie or I thought it was fucking trash. Anyway, so the whole movie is them going back and forth on if they like each other or if they don't. And I will tell you, Josh is the most conflicted, confusing ass character I've ever met in my life. First, in the elevator, he asks, what are we doing? Do we actually hate each other? Or do we just love the shit out of each other? And then they make out. And then they do start to like each other. They start making out again. But he's like, hey, I want to know if you kissed this other guy, if it feels better or worse than if you kissed me. What?
Do me a favor, go to dinner with Danny and kiss him.
What?
If it's better than our elevator kiss, then fine. I'm not gonna put my hands on you again unless you tell me that nobody kisses you like I do.
And then they get even further together where they're about to canoodle. And he's like, wait, I don't want to do it yet. And then the next time they do it. What? And the guy he's talking about is one of Lucy's coworkers who she has been dragging along the entire movie, completely gaslighting him and teasing him. Honestly, I feel the most for that guy. He gets so screwed over by her, and she is honestly the biggest walking red flag while doing it. Literally, she was just using him to get back at Josh for reasons, and she only comes clean that she doesn't feel the same way about him when he asks. She never does anything on her own accord, which makes her an even bigger red flag. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I did enjoy watching this movie, but I hate both of these characters. They are not good people. Also, going into the third act, some other context is that they both work for two separate book publishing companies that merge together. And the big third act conflict is that they both want this manager position, and despite them getting together and falling in love and all of that mumbo jumbo, Lucy is under the impression that Josh is gonna take the job from Lucy no matter what. Little do we know that Josh has actually quit his job and that she has no competition. A simple thing that could have been solved with simple communication. Now they try to excuse it by saying that Lucy does a better job when she's competing against him, but despite that, I still think it's fucking dumb. But all of that is not the reason that I can't tell if I hate or like this movie. The thing that really puts me off is when they talk about how they're pretty much both stalkers. And I mean serious stalkers. Now they play some jokes a little bit that Lucy knows what clothes Josh wears every day, which is a little bit of a stalkerish behavior on her part, but in fairness to her, he does wear the same colored shirts every day of the week, so it's not something that's unnoticeable by the common eye. But on his end, he fucking scares me. So I probably should have said this earlier in the video, but I've actually recorded my reactions to every single one of these movies, and they will be coming out periodically over the next couple weeks. But I want to show you my reaction to when I found out about the color of his wall in his bedroom. Oh, it matches.
What exactly does that prove?
Your dress isn't the only thing that matches your eyes.
Oh my God. Wait, did
What?
you?
How about this? Let's play
What?
a different game.
Hold up. They said earlier in the film at the wedding that her dress matched her eyes. And he just said he had a painted green wall that also matched her eyes. And that's how he's proving that he never hated her. Holy fuck. No. That is the biggest red flag I have ever seen in my life. That is not romantic. What? That's so creepy. So you can see, I was a bit perplexed. I'm sorry. There are things you can do if you have a crush on someone. And sometimes those are very nice, genuine gestures that might make the person feel good if they found out you were doing certain things, like drawing a sketch of her or buying her her favorite flowers because you know that her favorite flowers are these. But to paint the wall of your bedroom based on the color of your crush's eyes is creepy. That is psychotic. That is stalkerish behavior. I do not condone that. This movie trying to pull that off as romantic is the creepiest, most uncomfortable shit I've ever seen in my entire goddamn life. No. You can't do that. And you can't pull it off as some romantic gesture. You can't do it. Not to mention, he also writes those X's and O's of all the times he wants to kiss her or whatever. I don't even remember. Whatever that was creepy too. Honestly, all these movies are blending together and it's starting to give me a headache. I don't remember what happened when or in what movie or... Oh, I've been recording this for like 2 hours and I still have half the movies to go. It's weird. It's weird. Am I wrong for thinking that? Is that romantic, ladies? If I have a crush on someone, should I paint the walls of my bedroom the color of your eyes? Oh, my head. Yeah, this movie was weird, man. So I kind of skipped over a lot of the plot, but I'll just say basically they went on a few adventures, again, loving each other and hating each other. They played some paintball where they hated each other and then they loved each other because she got sick and he took care of her. Then they went to a wedding, which again, wedding. Almost every movie has had a wedding so far. And then a few other things here and there, and basically at the end of the day, they got together. Yay. But as far as the ranking goes, let's get into it. For Lucy, I'm giving her a flat 2. She had slightly stalkerish behavior, she was very petty, but the worst thing is she was a walking red flag when it came to her coworker. She constantly dragged him around, constantly gaslit him, and was just the worst kind of person towards him. So that's why she gets a 2. But Josh is even worse. Honestly, I would give him a 0. The only redeeming quality I will give him is that he took care of Lucy while she was sick. Besides that, he was a creepy stalker who knew way too much about Lucy. The paint on the wall is creepy as shit. He was kind of a dick the entire time, even when he liked her. And I just hate him. I hate him. He gets a 1. Now, as far as their chemistry goes, I will say they actually had quite a bit of chemistry. It seemed like they were very comfortable with each other. Their bickering back and forth really worked. It did seem like it was one of those love-hate relationships, or I guess hate-love relationships. I will actually give it this movie. Their chemistry was really on point. 4 stars. As far as their occupation, I didn't really have an opinion one way or the other. They both worked as like assistants at a book publishing company, which is close to writing and journalism, which I don't love. She had a fairly reasonable looking apartment. He had a creepy looking apartment, but I guess price wise it was fairly reasonable as well. So I don't really know. I don't really have an opinion. I'll just give it a solid 3 points. And then lastly, the third act conflict I hate with a passion because it is the most overused trope in any rom-com dilemma, which is the lack of communication. Again, they were both gunning for the same job. She thought he was going to screw her over. He wasn't even in the running at all, but he failed to mention that. This entire conflict could have been solved had he just mentioned that, but he didn't. And again, I know the movie tried to make up for it by saying, oh, well, we knew you'd try harder, but no, I'm not giving you that. I'm not going to give it to you. So I will give the third act 2 points, which brings the total of this movie to 12 points or 2.4 stars. Honestly, at the end of the day, I do think I actually enjoyed this movie, but I don't like it. So next up, we have a slightly controversial one, and I'll get to why that is in a minute, but we've got a really fun one called Sorority Wars. Guys, I'm going to be honest, this was a fun movie. Now, the reason I say it's controversial is because really there's not a lot of romance in it. There is a love interest, and there is a story between Lucy Hale's character and this guy, but it's not even close to the main storyline. So I will say, while I'm actually going to grade this movie fairly high, I wouldn't say it's the best rom-com necessarily, because there's not a lot of romance in it. Anyway, let me get into it. We have Lucy Hale's character named Katie, and the guy's name is Bo. And I want you to remember that her name is Katie in this, just for future reference. Basically, the story is that Katie and her best friend are going to college, and they're about to join their sorority houses. Now, Katie's mom is a sorority alumni, and she really wants Katie to go to the same sorority that she was in. However, Katie finds out that that sorority has done some very mischievous things in order for their sorority to thrive, which she calls them out on. And because of that, she becomes the most hated person on campus, which is totally unfair because she called them out for things that they shouldn't be doing. So because of that, she joins the rival sorority house, and they work together to pretty much win this competition at the end of the year or the end of the quarter, I'm not sure, to basically beat out her mother's sorority. And a lot of the conflicts stem from her best friend has joined the other sorority, so they are enemies for most of it. And I know saying this that I should remember what the sorority names are, but I don't, which makes this description of the movie really confusing, and I should just look it up, but I'm not going to, so you're gonna have to deal with it. But again, most of the story revolves around her and her trying to beat out the other sorority, while also trying to rebuild her friendship with her friend because they had a falling out, and also rebuilding a friendship with her mother. And honestly, this movie is a lot of fun because there is a lot of unnecessary drama and scenes that are way more emotional than they need to be, like to the point where it's like, okay guys, come on. But it's really fun. It's a Lifetime movie. I should have started with that. That would explain a lot of my description right now. But anyway, as far as the love interest, Bo, she first meets Bo at one of these parties, and he's kind of a dick to her, but that's because he thought that she was friends with the sorority girl who's been a bitch the entire time. I don't remember what her name was, but he actually comes to his senses the next time they hang out and apologizes, saying, hey, I kind of thought you were one of them. You're not. My bad. And throughout the movie, he's actually one of the few people who are on Katie's side the entire time. Again, most people kind of hate Katie for most of the movie. And then near the end of the movie, there's not really a third act conflict in the sense of a normal rom-com where something happens and they break up or something goes wrong. It's more just the third act is the final showdown of which sorority will win this trophy. And there's a bit of friendship rebuilding between Katie and her best friend, as well as family rebuilding between Katie and her mom. And at the end of the day, it all works out and Katie's sorority wins wins the trophy. And because of that, finally ends up with Bo officially. Now again, I kind of ran through that description fast simply because there wasn't a lot of rom-com moments in this, but I'll say again, outside of this rom-com video, it's a really fun movie. I had a lot of fun watching it, so I do recommend it. But anyway, I still want to rank this. So starting with Katie, I think she was great. I think this might have been one of the best characters written for Lucy Hale so far. She was nice, she was sweet, she tried to get along with people even though they were mean to her. She called people out when they were doing something they shouldn't, which I think makes for a very strong character. She was a little mean towards the rival sorority who wanted her in the first place, but she did apologize to them later and they ended up being good friends. But overall, one of the best characters for Lucy Hale so far, so I'm going to give her 5 points. Now when it comes to Bo, there's really not much to talk about. He's not in it that much, but he was very supportive. He was always there for Katie. He even went home with her for Thanksgiving and stuff like that. The only real thing was that he was kind of mean to her at the beginning, but he did apologize for that. So because of that, I'm going to give him 4 points. As far as the chemistry between the two, it wasn't great. I feel like I had to do a little more with the acting and the directing rather than the actual storytelling. I think they kind of just got along fine, but it wasn't anything special, so I'll give them 3 points. Now, as far as their occupation, they were in school, so there really wasn't that much to talk about. I mean, they were in school. There's not much to say. However, I will dock them 1 point because never once in this movie do they show them going to class. And also, Katie's room is huge. She's not even in a sorority yet, and her room is big. My dorm room was a shoebox. All right, I'm taking a point off simply based on that. So I will give occupation 4 points. And then lastly, the third act, there wasn't really a third act conflict necessarily, but I will say what's good about this movie is they made it in a way that there didn't need to be one. It actually worked really well that there wasn't some big turning point conflict near the end. So because of that, I'm gonna give the third act conflict 5 points as well, which funny enough brings this movie to a total of 21 points or 4.2 stars, which means this Lifetime movie, Sorority Wars, so far is the best movie I've watched in this marathon. That's kind of crazy to think. I didn't think I would rank it so high, but man, did I have fun watching it. But we still have a few more, so who knows? There could be another one that beats it. Let's get into it. Next up, we have the storied life of AJ Fikry. This is the first movie where Lucy Hale is technically not the main character, but she is the main love interest. The main character, of course, is AJ Fikry, aka Raj from The Big Bang Theory. But the movie is basically what the title of the movie says. It deals with AJ owning a bookstore, and AJ is depressed, and he drinks a lot. This is probably the closest to a non-comedy rom-com. Basically, he's had a bad life where his wife has passed away along with his sister, I think, and just him dealing with that. His entire life turns around when a baby shows up in his store, and he ends up raising her as her own. He then meets Amelia, or Amy, who's Lucy Hale's character, because she is from a book publishing company who works with him and his bookstore. And after quite a bit of will they, won't they, Amelia and AJ finally end up together. And again, this movie breaks one of my cardinal sins. You see, they're kind of flirtatious with each other for a lot of the movie, but it isn't until he goes to her place for the first time and she sits on her bed and pretty much straight up says, "Hey yo, so you wanna?" And then it just cuts to the next morning. It doesn't show anything else. It's like, again, I want the build up. I don't need to see all the canoodling. I don't need to see that, but that's not a build up. You're like a little bit flirty. And then out of nowhere, it's like, "Hey, yo, you wanna?" And then it just cuts to them having already done it. I hate that. I hate it. But then not long after that, you see that they've been together a decent amount of time. They pretty much start dating. They don't really show a lot of them actually dating. They kind of just showed them flirt. They did the canoodling and now they're together. And then there's a little more storyline of she's not sure if she wants to live a life with him or not, but that kind of gets swept under the rug the minute he proposes to her. And then 7 years pass and they've been married that entire time and they seem genuinely happy until AJ goes for a run and falls over and we find out that he has cancer that not long after that he dies from. And now Amy is left with just herself and their daughter. Honestly, not a very fun movie. It's pretty depressing. It's kind of like, oh, well, he finally turned his life around and got happy and then nope. But at the end of the day, it was still an enjoyable watch. So as far as the rankings go, I'll start with Amelia. And overall, she was a pretty good character. She didn't really do anything that I would consider a red flag or a mistake or a bad decision or anything like that. I will say, I almost want to give her a red flag in the sense of why did she go for AJ? Because I will say, I know the story was AJ turning his life around, but he was not a catch. Not even a little bit. So that was a little strange. And then there was the thought of her kind of leaving-ish and leaving their daughter behind, which was just I don't know, there was just very small things, but overall she was a great character. I'll give her 4 points. For Fikry, I'm gonna give him 3 points. Honestly, I completely understand the reasoning for why he is the way he is. They kind of explain the backstory and it makes perfect sense. I'm not trying to judge based on that because that makes sense. That said, he was still very rude at times. He wasn't always the nicest person. He was especially mean to Amelia the first time they met. A lot of little stuff like that. I just kind of feel like, but again, he wasn't the worst guy in the world either, so I'll give him 3 points. When it comes to their chemistry, it was kind of right down the middle. There wasn't anything where I was like, oh, they really love each other, but it also didn't seem like they hated each other, you know? It kind of seemed right down the middle. I will give it 3 points. Now, as far as occupation, again, kind of a boring occupation and living situation. We've got a bookstore owner and then someone who works for a book publishing company. I kind of liked it. It was fine. A lot of the story was revolved around books and stories. There's a whole subplot about this one book. So realistically, I don't have a problem with their occupation. They're not specifically writers, but they're not like anything super interesting. Also, he lived above his bookstore, which was kind of interesting. And she lived like a ferry right away, which made it a little more interesting too. So I kind of like that aspect. So I'll just give them a solid 3 points. So when it comes to the third act conflict, there wasn't really a specific one when it came to these two. I haven't actually mentioned yet, but there's actually a couple other subplots throughout. And I think the third act conflict kind of dealt more with those rather than between AJ and Amy. I guess if you want to go the cancer route as that conflict, I think that works. It's sad. It's a little generic in the sense of a movie, but I don't want to take away from the seriousness of that actually happening in real life because that's a very serious thing that people go through. So overall, there's not really much, but what they had was good. So I'll give it a 4, which brings the total of this movie to 17 points or 3.4 stars. Definitely not close to the worst movie on this list, but it's not necessarily my favorite either. I still enjoyed it though. Now, if we were talking about the worst movie on this list, well, that would be handed to the next one called Running on Empty. Like, my God, was this movie terrible. So this is the only other movie in this list where technically Lucy Hale is not the main character, but she is the main love interest. The main character is this guy named Mort. Yes, his name is Mort. You want to know what his occupation is? He's a mortician. Like, I don't know. I don't know. So basically the plot of this movie is that there is a new app that will tell you when you die. And it's like 99% accurate. And Mort here finds out that he is going to die within a year. So because of that, he doesn't really do anything about it. You'd think because he only has a year, he'd want to go explore the world or do all of this fun stuff before he dies. But instead he just goes back to work at the morgue, and not just normal work. He like does these weird like plays with the dead bodies. I don't know if people like that, but I certainly don't. I know and I can respect that there is an art of making bodies look good for like a funeral. Like you put makeup on them or you get rid of any like gash marks or whatever if they were killed or something, you know what I mean? But he like strings them up and like shows the whole story of how they die. It's weird. I don't need that in a rom-com. What is that doing there? And then it gets worse with his uncle who says the most like uncomfortable, unannounced shit imaginable. Like listen to some of these.
You're getting back in the saddle. That's so great. I mean, believe me, she was beautiful and like her body is really, really hot. You know what I mean? You know, I remember when I would see her at dinner, I'd be like, oh my God, I'd love to do her. But, you know, I wouldn't because of you, unless you were into it. You know, like you could have watched, you know what I mean? Some people are into that.
What the fuck? Why? Why is this included in this movie? I don't get it. This movie kind of feels like a parody or a satire of something, but I don't know what it's a parody or satire of. And now that's just me giving the context of Mort. Let me give you the context of what actually happens in the movie as far as plot. Basically, after finding out he's gonna die in a year, his future wife decides to leave him, which by the way, I don't even know how they were together. This doesn't seem like a couple that would work. I don't know. I'm not here to judge. Oh yeah, I am. But he decides to join this dating app, which is designed for people who are going to die based on that other app. It's kind of like Tinder, but for the end of your life. And that's where he meets Kate, Lucy Hale's character, who works for that dating app. Also, remember how I said to remember the name Katie? So we've got a Katie and we've got a Kate. Take a guess if she'll be called Lucy or Kate in the last movie. But because of the app, he's able to go on a couple dates, one of which actually ends up working out really well, minus the fact that there's no love involved in it. One doesn't work out at all, and one works out where the girl steals his jacket and his wallet. So He's having a really good time. Granted, I can't actually tell if he's having a really good time or not because he doesn't show any emotion at all. Literally, it is this face the entire movie. Does he smile? No. Does he frown? No. It is always just this deadpan face the entire movie. There is no emotion. But back to the story, it then takes a major turn. He meets this girl at a bar and there's this really uncomfortable scene about how she wants him to touch her. Yeah, and they go back to her place, only for him to find out that what they're about to do is not something they can do for free. Do you guys get where I'm going with that? But basically, she feels bad that he didn't realize that, so she's about to give him a free, you know, and then fucking dies. Literally dies in his lap. Apparently, this was her last day to live based on that app. And because of that, Mort is screwed. Because that girl's boss shows up and finds her there. Mort, instead of explaining the situation, just runs off. So her boss catches up to him, and this movie basically turns into some mob boss shit where it's like, hey, you owe me money because you killed my girl, or at least was there when my girl died, and if you don't give me the money, I'm gonna kill you or beat you or hurt your family or whatever. And then the rest of the movie is basically this whole thing where that guy keeps showing up and is demanding more and more money that Mort doesn't have to give him. And all I'm thinking is, isn't this a rom-com? Where's the rom-com? First of all, they barely showed any of Lucy Hale's character. They barely showed anything of Kate. And when they do, I don't see a lot of love there. I don't really see them gain along. And I don't see how Kate thinks Mort's a catch by any means. He is not. And when it comes to the comedy side of this movie, nothing's funny. Or rather, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be funny or not. There's some scenes where I'm like, we just found out you're gonna die soon. And it's a really emotional, touching moment. And then your girlfriend or ex-girlfriend is like, oh shit, I'm gonna die in like 60 years. This sucks. Is that funny? Am I supposed to laugh? Because I feel like the only time I laughed at this movie is how bad it was. I don't know. It's like either this movie is actually bad or I just missed something. Like I missed what this movie was trying to do. Anyway, Mort and Kate seem to be getting along. They have a little montage of them getting to know each other more, starting to like each other, starting to fall in love. And then we get to the third act conflict, which is so dumb. It has the mob boss guy go to Kate's house, choke her, and be like, hey, where's Mort? I need my money. And then of course he leaves after that. Kate's all distraught, and Mort goes to comfort her, and then they kiss. What? Let me say too, Mort has not told Kate any of this, any of the storyline with that one girl who died and has to owe this guy money, which he doesn't actually have to owe him anything. He hasn't told Kate any of this. So in Kate's mind, some random guy who knows Mort shows up, chokes the life out of her, and was like, Mort better give me my money. I'm sorry, if that's not the biggest red flag you've ever experienced in your life, I don't know what kind of life you've had. If I was Kate, I would drop Mort and I would never see him again. And then the final part of the movie is Mort goes and well, he kills the guy, or at least leads the guy to his death. I want you to watch this.
Now you really starting to piss me off. What? Make me look good.
Like, what? Did I have a stroke? What is this movie? Like, how did this movie get made? Who was like, oh yeah, that's a good plot? What? And then it gets worse because then we get to the very end of the movie where Mort and Kate decide to go on a trip. They actually did discuss some of the things that Mort should do before he dies. And right as they get to the airport, he gets hit by a car and dies. And like, he even does a whole speech. He's like, you were the best to me, Kate. I'll never forget you. What? And again, this is with the same exact emotion. He doesn't show any difference in emotion from before he got hit to after he got hit. It's amazing. It's one of the best endings to a movie I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, that's how the movie ended. All of that, and he just gets hit by a car randomly and dies. That's all I have to say. So as far as the ranking of this movie goes, we'll start with Kate. She gets an easy 4 points. She was a great character. She was full of life. Honestly, I'm giving her the point off because of the fact that she should have ran when that mob boss attacked her. She should not have stayed with Mort. That is the dumbest decision I've ever seen someone make. So she gets 1 point off, 4 points. Mort is on par with Josh from The Hating Game. I hated him. He was just the most uninteresting character ever. He was not a catch. His occupation freaked me out. He would always complain about stuff, but he would never do anything. I don't even know how to explain it, but he was just the worst. He was the worst. 1 point. He gets 1 point. Now for the chemistry, I'm also gonna give it 1 point. There is no way that these two should have ended up together. I didn't see them get along. The story said they got along, but I didn't really see it. It didn't seem like they liked each other that much. He always seemed like he never wanted to be there. She always seemed like she didn't know why she was there. It did not work. It did not work for me. 1 point. Now, as far as occupation, I will give this movie at least a little bit of credit. Working in the morgue is pretty interesting, and while I hated how creepy it was, that was a very interesting premise. And her working for the dating app was also pretty unique, so I'll give them that. I will give them 3 points for that. And then lastly, the third act conflict, 1 point. That was the dumbest third act thing ever. She should have ran the minute Mort showed up. She should have yelled at him. She should have hit him. I don't condone anyone hitting anyone, but she should have done something because I could not understand for the life of me why she would respond with a kiss after that whole ordeal. They should not have stayed together. So because of that, 1 point, which brings the total of this movie to 11 points or 2.2 stars. Definitely the lowest rated movie out of all of them today. And yet surprisingly, not that much lower than some of them. So that's interesting. Anyway, now we are down to the final movie, the final Lucy Hale rom-com that we will be watching today. Again, if I missed any, feel free to comment down below, but again, I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm sorry. And that final movie is A Cinderella Story Once Upon a Song. Guys, this one was fun. Now, I was actually pretty excited going into this for the first time because I actually really enjoy the Selena Gomez Cinderella story, minus the age difference between her and the guy, but besides the point. But I had never seen this one until this video, so I was really excited to check it out. And man, did it deliver. So the story is not that much different than all the other Cinderella story movies. First, we have Lucy Hale's character, Katie, which this is the third time she has been named Kate or Katie. They really got to come up with more unique names for her in future movies. But she lives, of course, with her evil stepmother, along with her evil stepsister, and her stepbrother, who I'm not going to say is evil because he actually comes in clutch later in the movie. And the Prince Charming character is this guy named Luke, whose dad works for this record company. And the plot of this movie is that Katie is a singer and she sends this demo reel to Luke's father. And Luke's father really likes the demo. However, Katie's stepmother says that it was her daughter who actually sang in that demo, not Katie. So basically the story is that Katie has to be the behind the scenes singer while her stepsister is the main attraction. And that makes things very complicated because Luke likes the sound of the singer's voice. And they do a very classic Cinderella story where they go to this party where you can't see the people's faces and Luke meets Katie without knowing who she is, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen because I'm sorry, that is so obviously Katie, not her blonde, blue-eyed stepsister. I think one of Lucy Hale's physical traits is her big brown eyes, and that is the most noticeable thing here. Luke, how could you mistake her for the evil stepsister? Are you serious? That's one thing I'll get to when I get to the ranking, but Luke, really nice guy in this movie, complete dumbass. One of the dumbest men in any of these rom-coms. Anyway, so that's pretty much the entire story until the very end of the movie where we find out that Katie's stepbrother actually really likes Katie and hates his sister and his mom. So he helps Katie pretty much screw them over. And at the end of the movie, in the final performance, everyone finds out that Katie is the real singer of these songs, not her stepsister. And because of that, Luke is really happy because you could tell throughout the movie that Luke did really like Katie. So now knowing that she's also the singer made it work out a lot and they ended up together. Now this movie is kind of like Sorority Wars where it's not the most rom-com ever. However, this is a Cinderella story. It's all about her ending up with Prince Charming. So of course I had to cover it. And man, am I happy I covered it because this was a lot of fun. As far as the ranking goes, we'll start with Katie. She was an easy 5 points. There was absolutely nothing wrong with her. She was nice. She was friendly. She was a good singer. She took care of her friends. She even helped her evil family when they were mean to her. Honestly, she was a green flag all around. Probably the best character we've seen today. Now, Luke was also a really great character. The one main thing is that he was just dumb. Like, he was just dumb. He never pieced anything together, and it was the most obvious Disney shit I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if Disney actually made this movie. I don't remember who made this movie. But like, he had a big heart, very nice man, but there was not a lot going upstairs. So because of that, I'm gonna give him 4 points. Their chemistry was also really good. I thought they got along really well. It seemed like they really liked each other. It wasn't necessarily perfect, so I'll give it a 4. And then as far as occupation, again, they were in school, so there's not really much to say. The main drawback, of course, was just that you never actually once saw them go to class. Like, come on, guys, do at least one scene with them in class. I don't think they actually ever did. So because of that, I'm also docking a point. I'll give them a 4. And then the last thing was the 3-act conflict, which again, in terms of this movie, there wasn't really one between Luke and Katie, not really between the love interests. It was more the turning point of her brother and this guy. Again, all these movies are kind of blending together. I don't remember what that guy's name is. Meatball?
My friends call me Meatball because the other half is Italian.
I seriously think someone called him Meatball or Mustache. It was something like that. Anyway, it was them turning and deciding to help Katie. That was kind of the turning point, which I thought was pretty good. So with that, I will give the third act conflict a 4, which brings the total of this movie to 21 points or 4.2 stars. Now, we have officially watched and ranked every single Lucy Hale rom-com. If we look at all of the movies tallied up by my ranking system, you will see that my favorite Lucy Hale rom-com on this list is a tie between A Cinderella Story, Once Upon a Song, and Sorority Wars. Literally the two movies that are the farthest away from actually being a rom-com were my favorite. Now, in a bit of fairness, I'll say the next best on the list was Which Brings Me to You, which honestly is probably the best specifically romance comedy movie. Sorority Wars does not have that much romance. A Cinderella Story does have romance, but it's not necessarily the main part of the story. So while those were my favorite, if I were to be lonely again next year, which let's be honest, I probably will. I don't do anything except watch movies and make dumb videos like this. I will probably go with Which Brings Me to You. But guys, that is my list. Honestly, not exactly what I was expecting, but I'm not complaining either. Sorority Wars and Cinderella Story were dumb, but they were fun. All of the other rom-com movies were either too dumb or they just pissed me off. But again, in a weird way, I actually enjoyed all of them in their own ways, but those just happen to be what were my favorite. So guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree with this list. Like I said before, I'm going to be releasing all of my reactions to these videos periodically over the next couple of weeks, along with some other videos here and there. But anyway, guys, that is it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. This took a long time to make, so if you like this video, please subscribe. Like I said, I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by May, so if you guys can make it happen, I would greatly appreciate it. Much love. I hope you guys have a great, amazing rest of your day. Go watch some rom-coms, especially Running on Empty. That was my favorite, obviously. And I will see you guys in the next video.